Welcome, everyone. I'm Joel Levin. I'm with Plug in America. I'm going to share my screen now. Can people hear me? Can you hear my voice? If someone who has their camera on, give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm going to do a screen share so you can see my slides. This morning, I'm going to be talking about electric cars. So for the next 50 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking about getting started with electric cars. So it's intended for someone who's just thinking about getting their first EV, just learning about it. If you've been driving an EV for 5 years and you're on your third car, this may or may not be useful. Might be things that you don't know, but I'm primarily aimed at people that are just starting to learn about EVs. So let me start by telling you about Plug in America. We are a national 501c3 organization. We've been around, we incorporated in 2008. We were around way before that. We're a national association of EV drivers. Our goal is to accelerate the rollout of electric cars. We see ourselves as kind of the national consumer voice for electric cars, and our members represent probably the world's deepest pool of experience in living with and driving EVs on a daily basis. And we probably do more public education on EVs than pretty much anyone in the country. And we are brand neutral. So we're not here to sell you a car. Our goal is to educate you around EVs, and you can, make a decision if you're interested in getting an EV, what's a good car that will fit your life. So I'm going to talk about 5 different things. Start out with why do people drive EVs? What's interesting about these cars? How to find the right car for you? How to charge your car and learning about charging, incentives that are out there, and then we're all going to go for a test drive or 2 test drives if we have enough time. So I like to start with this image. This is New York City in the 1890s. It was a moment when electricity was pretty new. You'll note that there's street lights, but the buildings are still dark and people are still getting around by horse and carriage. It was before the internal combustion engine had come around. So the internal combustion engine is around 100 years old, a little bit more. It has not been around forever. It's not a technology that was passed down to us from the ancient Egyptians. And it's been a great technology. Internal combustion engines have had a good run, but there is now something better. There's an improved technology that's out there, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. So what is so good about electric cars? I would say, to say it in 2 words, they're better. It's a better, fundamentally simpler, more elegant technology for moving people and freight around. Instead of, an internal combustion engine has hundreds of moving parts. They all wear out. That's why with an old car, you've just got a ton of maintenance. An electric car is a very simple technology at its core. It's basically just a battery, an electric motor, and a set of wheels. So there's a lot less stuff to wear out, a lot less maintenance. And interestingly enough, electric cars have been around for a long time. So back when Henry Ford produced the Model T and chose to put an internal combustion engine in it, electric cars existed. But they were very, very limited by battery technology, as they have been for the last 100 years. Historically, batteries have been large, not very powerful, kind of clunky, kind of expensive, wouldn't go very far. But in the last decade, that has been changing very rapidly. So the kind of battery in an electric car today, it's the same battery in your cell phone. A lithium-ion battery is this pretty much standard technology in all electric cars, or nearly all electric cars, and it's been changing radically in the last 10 years. So in 2010, when the first EVs and the kind of modern generation of EVs came out onto the market, 1 kilowatt hour of battery for an electric car cost about $1,000. And today, that same kilowatt hour costs about $156, and it's much smaller. And so in the last decade, EV batteries, lithium-ion batteries, have gotten dramatically cheaper, and they're continuing to get cheaper and more dense and more energy dense and smaller. So you can put the same amount of batteries in, or you can put more batteries in the same space. And we're seeing that with the current models of car. Every couple of years, they'll just, in the same space, they'll have a more powerful battery, and the ranges keep creeping up every year or two with existing models, just because the improvements in battery technology, and they're continuing to improve. So Bloomberg estimates that by 2024, 25, in about 5 years from now, that batteries will get cheap enough that electric cars will hit price parity with gas cars with no subsidies or anything. And then after that, they're going to get cheaper. So that's when the world starts to get really interesting. So that's what's exciting about EVs, is the technology is changing so rapidly right now. So let me tell you a few of the reasons people love electric cars. I like to start out with this one, is that they save money. So that may be counterintuitive. You may have thought that they were only expensive cars for rich people, but in fact, if you look at all the incentives and tax credits that are currently available, you look at the very substantial savings on fuel and on maintenance, and you're comparing cars apples to apples, EVs are generally about the same or less than comparable gas cars. So you can't compare, like, a Tesla Model S with a Toyota Camry. Obviously, the Tesla is going to be more expensive. But if you're comparing the same types of cars, they're not more expensive. So that might be a surprise to you, but it's true. And also, you need to compare the monthly cost of ownership, not the upfront purchase price, because that actually makes a big difference. So next thing, and for many people, this is the first thing, is that they're more fun to drive. So the nature of battery technology is that when you step on the accelerator, it just goes. You have maximum torque from a standstill. It's very different than a gas car, where you step on the accelerator and it kind of hesitates and it builds up this head of power and then it kind of lurches off. EVs, it's this smooth acceleration. There's no transmission. So it's quiet and smooth, and it takes off, from a stop. So they're a lot more fun to drive. And if you ask anybody who drives an EV how they feel about the drive in their car, generally they're going to tell you they love it. That it's very different from a gas car, and it's a lot more fun. They're also more convenient. The model of how you fuel an EV is really different from a gas car, and this is something people have to get their head around. With a gas car, you drive to the gas station once a week or twice a week and you fuel up. With an EV, it's a bit more like charging your cell phone. So if you think about, when do you charge your cell phone? It's mostly at night while you're sleeping, or during the day while you're at your desk or you're doing something else and it's plugged in. And that's kind of what an EV is like. It's you rarely, for most people, you rarely drive somewhere else to charge your car like you do with a gas car. So it's a little bit of a different model. And then, of course, with maintenance, you have much less maintenance. Not zero, but like, I have a 5-year-old Nissan Leaf, and mainly tires and brakes, and wiper fluid. And there's a lot of all the parts that you have to do regular maintenance on with a gas car don't exist in an EV. There's no oil changes. There's no spark plugs. There's no fuel pump. There's no there's no fuel system and fuel pump, and all that stuff doesn't exist. So there's a lot less maintenance, a lot less scheduled maintenance you have to worry about. One other big selling point is that EVs are local. The fuel is local. So oil, there's this massive infrastructure all over the world, as you know, to bring oil to us from halfway around the globe. Electricity is mostly local. So when you spend your fuel dollars, you're spending them with your local solar installer, putting solar panels on your roof like I have, or with local electricians, or with your power utility, which is local spend rather than the money being sent halfway around the world. So it keeps money in your economy. And then of course EVs are cleaner. A battery electric car has no tailpipe emissions of any kind. There is no tailpipe. Obviously, there's some emissions associated with the electricity, unless you're buying from 100% renewables, which is possible. And plug-in hybrids have very low emissions. And then, of course, the carbon footprint from EVs is much lower than petroleum, and it gets cleaner every year. So as our electric grid is getting cleaner and cleaner with renewable energy, the carbon footprint from your car is getting cleaner every year as well. And so that's what we're going for. When we're all driving cars with no tailpipe and we have trucks with no tailpipe, hopefully this is what our city will look like on a regular basis going forward. So let me give you a definition. So what is an electric vehicle? The way we think of it at Plug in America, it is any vehicle with a plug, with an electric plug that you plug into a wall. So there's a couple of different flavors. A battery electric vehicle is the most common. It's pure electric. It only takes electricity. The only way to get power into it is to plug it into a wall. Sometimes people call it a BEV, or an all electric, or a pure electric, or 100% electric, but that's a battery electric vehicle. It's the most common phrase for that. And then there's also a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, which or a PHEV, or a plug-in, or a plug-in hybrid that can take electricity with a plug, and also you can fuel it with gas. So it has two separate fuel systems. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility with your car. So there's a few common ones in the market that people think of, the Chevy Volt, the Prius Prime. So there's a Prius that has a plug on it. There's another one that doesn't. The Pacifica minivan, the Honda Clarity plug-in hybrid. So those are kind of the best known plug-in hybrids. So then there's also fuel cell electric cars, and those are also called a FCEV, or a hydrogen car, and those get their power by hydrogen. So you fuel it with hydrogen, and then the hydrogen is converted to electricity. Fuel cells don't have a plug, so we don't really consider them a real electric car, because you're fueling with hydrogen, not electricity. And then there's also hybrid vehicles, so like regular Prius, for example. People call it a hybrid electric vehicle, or a hybrid, or an HEV, or a conventional hybrid. And again, we don't really consider that an EV, because you get your fuel from electricity, which is then converted into, you get your fuel from gasoline. So you put gasoline into the car, and it's converted into electricity inside the car. So let me talk a bit about what is the best electric car for you. And there is no one best electric car for everybody. People ask me that sometimes, and it depends how you're going to use it. And more so than with a gas car, you need to think about your needs and about how you're going to use your car and how you're going to charge your car, and that will kind of drive your decision making. But you want to think this through a little bit before you go out and buy one, because you want to make sure you get a car that fits your needs. So a few questions. One common one is, how far do you drive every day? So you want to make sure that your EV will comfortably cover your daily commute. And with the modern, the latest generation of EVs that are coming out right now, they typically get 220 to 250 to 300 to 350 maybe range, but probably 200 is the absolute minimum you'll see right now, 200. So for most people, that's going to be fine. That's probably not going to be an issue in terms of daily range, daily commute. If you're looking at getting a used EV, it's a little bit more of a concern, that you want to make sure that it covers your daily commute. Or if you're getting a plug-in hybrid, because those have a shorter electric range. If you get a plug-in hybrid that goes less than the distance you drive every day, you're going to find it annoying, because you're going to end up driving mostly on gasoline and feel like you sort of wasted your money. So if you get a plug-in hybrid or a used EV, you need to really make sure that it'll cover your daily commute. If you're getting a brand new EV, it's probably not a problem, not something to worry about. It's important to think about road trips. So do you want this EV to be able to cover whatever kinds of road trips you take? And it sort of depends on, you know, your lifestyle and what you do. If you drive from LA to San Diego once a month with not too much luggage, you probably want your car to be able to cover that trip. If you drive to Wyoming once a year with a ton of camping gear, you may not. You may feel like getting a car that meets your needs for that one trip, and then you have to drive it around town the other 365 days. Maybe is not a good fit. Maybe you should rent a car for that one trip. So that's something to think about. What kind of road trips do you take, and do you need this EV to cover those road trips? So that's sort of a consideration. Another big question is how many cars there are in your household. So if you have a 2-car household, you may want to use the EV just for trips around town, and use the other car for road trips. That gives you a lot more flexibility, because then, you know, range is one of the big issues with EVs, but if you're just using it for around town, suddenly range doesn't matter, and you have a lot more flexibility about what you buy. So that's something to think about. If you have a 1-car household, then you need to make sure that your EV really meets, you know, your needs, or, you know, almost all your needs, except for, you know, your one annual trip to Wyoming or whatever. Another issue is how much space do you need for how many passengers, and how much cargo, how much stuff do you usually carry? And that's because right now, with EVs, the selection is greater in mid-sized and smaller cars. If you need a really large car, the options right now are kind of thin. You know, just being frank. If you need a pickup truck, or if you need a large SUV, right now there aren't tons of choices. But they're going to be. There's a lot of stuff in the pipeline, and in a year, 18 months, you're going to have a lot more selections with those larger vehicles. So another really important question is, where will you charge? So you need someplace that is convenient for you to charge reliably on a regular basis. So I sort of underlined those 3 words. It needs to be convenient. So it should be someplace where you regularly park, or kind of not very far from there. If you regularly have to drive 20 minutes to charge your car, you're gonna start to not like it. It's not gonna be much. It's gonna be sort of annoying. It needs to be reliable. So wherever this place is that you charge, it needs to pretty much be available and be working. If you charge regularly in a place where there's 3 people waiting in line, you're not gonna like it. And, you know, it needs to be pretty regular. Depending on your car and your driving habits, you may be plugging in every night, or twice a week, or once a week, or once every 2 weeks, but, you know, probably not less than that. So it's going to be more or less consistent. And for most people, that place is at home. That is, if you can charge at home, that is by far the easiest, cheapest, most convenient place. And probably 90% of all charging happens at home. The second best place is at work. So if you can charge at work, that's a pretty good option. And then third best is public charging around your neighborhood. So if there's public chargers that are not so far from where you live, or maybe from where you work, that can work out pretty well as also. If you don't have any of those things, driving an EV is going to be a little bit inconvenient. And so if you're really committed, you should go for it, but you need to be aware of that. So this is the landing page for plugstar.com. This is a website that we operate. I would encourage you to scribble that down, plugstar.com. And it has a lot of information on it that you will find very helpful. The core of it is it's got a shopping assistant, car finder, that will, all those questions that I just talked to you about, it's going to ask you all those things and a few others, and then it will suggest cars that are a good fit for you, and show you dealers that live near you that can sell you that car. And some of those dealers have actually been through PlugStar training, so they've been certified by us that they're good at selling EVs. And there's a bunch of other useful information here as well. I'll talk about as we go along. But the kind of core is the shopping assistant that helps you to identify EVs that are a good fit for you. So a couple of things to think about before you walk into a dealership. First of all, you want to know the vehicle that you want to buy. If you want to buy an EV, going to browse at a dealership doesn't work very well. You want to have a pretty good idea of what you want before you walk in the door, and PlugStar can help you with that. If you can select a PlugStar certified dealership, it will be better. You'll have probably a better shopping experience. You'll have salespeople that are a little bit more skilled in selling the cars. You want to have a plan of how you're going to regularly charge your vehicle, as we just talked about. We get, at Plug in America, we get phone calls from time to time of people who just bought an EV, just got home, and they realize that they're not sure how they're going to charge it. And they didn't have this discussion with the dealer, and they're sitting at home and they don't have charging at home, and they're not sure what to do. And they call us, and sometimes it's not a good situation. So you don't want to be there. You don't want to be in that situation. Another tip is it's very useful to call the dealership and make an appointment before you go in. I know that sounds sort of counterintuitive and a little scary, but most dealerships that sell EVs have 1, 2, 3 salespeople on staff who are kind of their EV specialists who really know a lot about the car. And if you call in advance and try to make an appointment with that person, you have a better chance of having a positive experience at the dealership rather than just getting one of the other salespeople who may not know anything about the EV they're selling and won't be as helpful to you. It's a good idea to know all the incentives that you're eligible for before you walk into the dealership so that you really know what you're paying for the car. Don't assume that the dealership will know all the incentives that are out there. They may not. And I'll tell you a little bit later how you can learn about incentives. And then also, if you're going to lease your car, aside from GM and Tesla, you should ask the dealership if the tax credit is built into your lease, because some of them build it in and some of them don't, and that's a useful question to know. For Chevrolet and Tesla, they're no longer eligible for the federal tax credit, so that's not, you don't need to worry about that. So let me talk a little bit about charging. There's 3 different ways that you can charge most EVs. You have 50 ways to leave your lover, but only 3 ways to charge an EV. So the first one is what's called level 1 or L1 charging. And that's just a plain old plug, just a plain old wall plug. And every EV will take a wall plug. So if nothing else, you can always just plug your EV into the wall. They all take that. It's a little bit slow, but it works fine. And many EV drivers just do that. And so you can, if you drive less than about 40 miles in an average day, you can fully charge any EV overnight with a wall plug. So that's an option that's out there. It's cheap, it's simple, and they're everywhere. Level 2 or L2 is a 220 outlet, which most homes have one. If you have a dryer, generally it's a 220 outlet, or sometimes air conditioners have them. And there's a standard plug that's called a J plug. There's a little picture of it there, that pretty much all EVs take, except for Teslas. Teslas have their own little proprietary plug, but other EVs, pretty much 100% of them use a J plug to plug into a 220 outlet. So, and with a 220 outlet, it'll take, on average, you'll get about 25 miles of range with an hour. So for your average American, if you're driving 30, 40 miles a day, on level 2, you can fully charge. You can fill it back up in an hour and a half, roughly, something like that. Then there's fast charge, which is 3-phase power. It's big industrial power. You mostly will see these along highways. Most EVs will take a fast charger, but not all. Plug-in hybrids generally don't there might be exceptions. There are 3 different types of plugs for a fast charger. The most common, the one that's becoming more and more universal, I think, is CCS. And most vehicles have those. Chatamo is used by the Nissan Leaf and a couple of other cars. And then Tesla has their own proprietary chargers as well, and their own network of fast chargers. They call them superchargers. So those are your 3 ways that you can charge an EV. So let me talk a little bit about public charging and public charging networks. So there are a number of different networks out in the world. If you want to see what's out there, the single best place is plugshare.com. It's a free app. You can download it onto your cell phone. Excuse me? Okay. So plugshare.com it's a free app you can download on your cell phone, and it shows pretty much all public charging. It is very expansive. It's crowdsourced. So there's pretty much any other navigation map these days will also show you public charging. Google Maps has it. So if you have Google Maps open and you just type in, electric car charging, it'll show you chargers around you. It's not quite as comprehensive as PlugShare, but it's pretty good. So with the different charging networks, so there's probably 5 main networks around Los Angeles. There's a few others as well. And mostly they all want you to download their app and sign up to be a part of their network. So some of them will take a credit card, some of them won't. My strong suggestion is that when you buy an EV, the first thing you do, you get home from the dealership, take an hour, sign up for all 5 of these networks, and you'll just have it done, and you won't have to worry that when you pull up to a public charger, you're gonna have to sit there for 10 minutes at 2 o'clock in the morning, downloading their app and inputting your credit card and everything. So if you sign up for all these, it'll be a little bit of a hassle up front, but it's worth it to save you some trouble later. Someday they will all take credit cards, but like a gas station, but unfortunately today they don't. It's California law actually that new stations do need to, so you'll see more and more of them just take a credit card. So let me speak about charging at home. So if you live in a single family house, as I mentioned, if you drive less than 40 miles a day, a standard 110 plug might just be enough for you. And lots of EV drivers drive on that. So that's the simple basic solution that might work just fine. One caution, it should be on a dedicated circuit. So if you've got a 110 plug and you've got your refrigerator and your microwave and your toaster and everything else running off of that same circuit, you may blow a breaker. So ideally it should be on a dedicated plug so there's not too much else that's operating on that. If you need to get a level 2 charging station, first thing is you want to think about where it will be located. And so you want to have it, think about where your excuse me? You want to think about where the charge port on your vehicle is going to be located and that you have the charging station close to that. So the charge port on an EV can be in different places. On a Nissan Leaf, it's on the front. On a Tesla, it's on the back quarter panel. It's in different places. And so you just want to think about where that is and have the charger near there. And then wherever the location is that the charger is going to be, you want to make sure that it's relatively accessible to power. You don't have to, but the more remote that spot is, the more expensive it's going to be for an electrician to bring power there. And that just costs more money. So you want to pick the right charging station, and again, plugstar.com is a good place to go to get to learn about chargers. We have a database there that shows every charging station that's on the market. A few different considerations. Is it going to be indoors or outdoors? Obviously, they have some that are more ruggedized that can take the rain if you're going to be parking your car outdoors. How long of a cord do you need? 25-foot cord is common, but it's not universal. Some of them are shorter. What charging speed are you going to need? So you need to find out in kilowatt hours, how fast does your car charge? How much power can it take? And you should have a charger that's at least that fast. Otherwise, it's going to slow you down. And the ratings for them, they range typically from about 16 amps to 40 amps. And depending, what kind of car you get, that would sort of drive what charger is appropriate for you. So with installing your charging station, you want to hire a licensed electrician. You're dealing with a lot of power, and you want to make sure that it is done correctly and safely. And so having a licensed electrician and having it done with a permit is the best way to have assurance of that. So we really recommend that you use a permit. Again, how do you find an electrician? So this is a pretty basic job for any licensed electrician, just running a 220 line and putting this piece of equipment at the end of it. Most electricians can handle this. Ideally, you want someone who's done it before. If you want to find an electrician, plugstar.com has an electrician finder that can show you electricians near you who know how to do this work. And then one other consideration is thinking about your electric panel. So if you have a 100 amp panel, which can be, usually as older houses may, you may or may not need an upgrade to put in a charging station. That's a conversation you need to have with an electrician. If you have a 200 amp panel, probably you're okay. But again, this is a conversation with an electrician as to whether, whatever size your panel is, whether it can handle a charger. So if you live in an apartment, if you can work with level 1 charging, that is, so ideally you have an apartment that already has level 2 charging built in, and then you're all good to go. If it doesn't, think about level 1. If there is a plug anywhere near your vehicle that you can reach, that could be a good solution. If you need to install level 2 in an apartment, it can be done, but it's not for the faint of heart. That's a conversation you need to have with your management, and that can be challenging. So there are a number of different incentives. I'm just going to touch on them here to really dive deeply into incentives and understand exactly what you're eligible for. Again, I want to refer you to plugstar.com. There's a functionality there where you can feed it a bunch of data and it'll tell you exactly what you're eligible for, and I would encourage you to do that. So the biggie is the federal EV tax credit. It can be up to $7,500, but it depends on the vehicle and it depends on your tax liability. So it's only a tax credit. So if you don't have federal tax liability, you're not eligible for the credit. Although if you lease a car, the leasing company can get the credit and kind of roll it into your lease. There's also a 30% federal tax credit for the cost of buying and installing a charging station. That is currently only for 2020. It may get extended. Hopefully it will be extended, but be aware of that. California has what's called the CVRP, the Clean Vehicle Rebate Project. It's a $2,000 rebate for an EV for most consumers, or $1,500 for a plug-in hybrid, but it depends on your income. It can be more for lower income people. It can be zero for people who are above a certain income. So you want to investigate that a little bit. Also check the website for your utility. Many different utilities have different kinds of incentives for EVs or for charging. And this is all on plugstar.com. So now let's take some test drives. So we're going to take you on 2 test drives today. I think we have time for both. One is a Tesla Model S, and then we'll do a Chevy Bolt. So give me just a second here.
Hi, I'm Mark Giller, and this here is my 2013 Tesla Model S. I got it used about 3 years ago because after driving shorter range electric cars for about 17 years, I decided I wanted a car that I could go anywhere in. And in fact, have driven the car across the country twice in the last 3 years. And it's an awesome road trip car, that's for sure. I've got a garage, and I've got a charger that I've used since 2001 when I got my first electric car. But a Tesla, of course, has its own proprietary charging connector. So every Tesla comes with an adapter. So you can use a regular standard J1772 connector to charge your Tesla. So I put the adapter onto my regular J1772 charge connector and just plug it into the car. So this is the key fob for the Model S. Quite adorable. It's a little Model S. And you can use the key fob not just to keep in your pocket and allow you to start the car, but also to open the frunk, to open the trunk, and to unlock the car by pushing twice on the top. And it opens the door handles. So I just keep the key fob in my pocket. You don't need it when you're driving. And there's nowhere to stick it in the car. There's no key. In fact, there's not even a start button. You start the car by simply putting your foot on the brake. And while everything is off right now, put your foot on the brake and suddenly you got some little ding, ding, dings, and the dashboard is displaying what you decided to put on the dashboard. And then this is the stalk, which has your drive, your reverse, and your park. And that's really all there is to it. Just push down, and boom, we're in drive. So we're about to get on the freeway. Get to experience a little bit of the great acceleration of this car. So among the great things about an electric car is that it's quiet and it's smooth. It has no vibration. So you arrive at your destination feeling a lot better than if you were driving a gasoline or a diesel car, which has incredible vibration that literally is shaking your body from the moment you turn it on until the moment you turn it off. One of the things that truly differentiates Tesla from other electric cars is their supercharger fast charging network. The map in the car can direct you right to the charging station and even tell you how many chargers are available. About every 75 to 120 miles, you've got a Tesla supercharging station on any major highway with anywhere from 4 to 40 superchargers. So here we are, we've arrived at the Tesla supercharger station in Daly City, about 15 miles outside of San Francisco. Basically, you take the thing out of the holster, you press on the button, and because you pressed on the button here, it opens up the hatch. The thing is flashing blue, which means it's ready. Plug it in, it turns solidly, and then after a little while, it's going to start flashing green, meaning it's charging. One of the great things about Teslas is they not only have a sort of trunk in the back where you can put stuff, but they've also got a frunk in the front where you can put stuff. Now here, take a look at this. One of the great things about the older Teslas is the frunk is really huge. It's incredibly comfortable and stable. The car it doesn't shake when trucks pass it. It's really an amazing experience. most of the characteristics of a Tesla are shared with every electric car on the road. Thanks for riding along with me in my 2013 Tesla Model S. You're going to enjoy whatever electric car you get, for sure.
Okay, so that was a Tesla Model S, and now we're going to go for a ride in a Chevrolet Bolt.
Hi, my name is Paul Pansella, and I'm a longtime faculty member at Western Michigan University, talking to you from Kalamazoo. The idea today is that I'm going to give you a little overview, share some of my experiences with driving a Chevy Bolt electric vehicle. Okay, so I'm taking you into the back wall of my garage. This is the equipment I use to charge my car in general when it's parked overnight here in my garage. What I have is a open EVSE charging unit, level 2. Came in a kit form, so I got it pretty cheap. It doesn't have any fancy Wi-Fi communication or anything, but it does have a timer so that I can set it to only charge during off-peak hours, which the electric company appreciates. Plugs into this standard 240 volt outlet overnight. I would take the handle out of the receptacle here on the wall. This is the cable from the charging unit. I would come over to the side of the car, open up the charge door, and just plug it right in. Right away I get to see that there's a light on the dashboard, flashing green, tells me it's running, tells me it's charging. And at this rate, on my level 2 charger, I'm getting back about 30 miles of range for every hour that I'm charging. Here's a driver's view of the main instrument panel behind the steering wheel. And over here, the infotainment display. The display has different modes so that you can decide how much information you want or how much is too much information. Here's the most basic mode. The green bars on the left. Over here, that's functioning as your gas gauge. The number that goes with it, 122 miles in this case, is the car's best guess at how many miles you can still go before you're empty. When we're driving, it'll tell you how much power you're using, whether you're using power or regaining power because of regeneration. Okay, here we are inside the car, and we're gonna start up. All you do is put your foot on the brake, push this button. No key is required as long as the fob is inside the car. And now we'll get going down the road. I'm gonna get on the interstate highway and we'll see how fast it accelerates. So I'm approaching the entrance. Okay, so I'm approaching the entrance ramp now. And I'm gonna now kind of floor it. This is not a golf cart. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. I also want to say a few things about how the car handles in the winter. We've had no problems. I do put snow tires on it, but because of the weight distribution, I think the extra weight of the batteries, it feels very sure-footed whenever there's snow. You do get a little bit less efficiency in cold weather. That's true for gasoline cars as well as electric cars, but you kind of notice it more with electric cars. In our very worst cold weather, you get about 60% of your very best range on a full charge. This particular car, having 240 mile estimated range, estimated by the EPA, it's plenty for almost all of our driving. We don't have to worry about range except when we're going on trips. But you will notice in the winter that you will have to charge more often.
Okay, so let's see, that was what I've got for you today. We take some questions. I wanted to also recommend to people National Drive Electric Week, which is coming up. So normally it's an annual event where we've got hundreds of different EV activities all over the country. This activities. It's the end of September, so you can look up driveelectricweek.com and find out more about what's going on. .org. So hopefully we have time for a couple of questions now before we wrap up.
Sure. So the first question, Joel, is if there's so many EVs today, so why is it still very expensive?
Well, the EVs with expense, what's useful is don't compare just the upfront cost against another car. Upfront, they are a little bit more expensive, but if you look at the savings in maintenance and the savings in gasoline and the different incentives that are out there, and you're comparing apples to apples, they're actually not more expensive. They're really not. That seems counterintuitive, but so for example, I drive a Nissan Leaf. And if you compare the base model Leaf with equivalent gasoline cars, and you look at all the different incentives, it's not more expensive. Teslas seem like an expensive car, but really, when you're looking at the cost of a Tesla, you should be comparing it with equivalent cars. You should be comparing it against like a Porsche, for example. I've heard that the number one car that the Tesla Model S competes with is like a Porsche Panamera, and it's much cheaper. So if you compare it apples to apples to equivalent cars, they're actually not, surprisingly enough.
Okay. Another question is about concern about EV in emergency evacuation situation. Since EV takes time to charge and has limited range, is there a good argument for this concern other than have another regular car?
Mm-hmm. So you want to, keep your EV charged, just like with a gas car. It's a good idea to keep it full of gas for emergencies, and with an EV, you want to do that as well. So in an emergency, if the power goes down, gas stations stop working as well. Gas stations use electricity. So when there's no electricity, you can't charge an EV, but you also can't charge a gas car. So it's kind of a similar situation. Also, in theory, you can power your house with your EV battery. Current cars don't have that functionality, but I would expect that we'll see that in the future, where you can use your EV as a backup power source for your house.
Thank you for that. Another question is about concern, and if you have good recommendation to resources to counter argument for the claims that the EVs are actually have environmental damage as in respect of lithium mining.
Right. So so EVs, their batteries have lithium and cobalt and nickel and a number of other minerals in them, and minerals mostly come from mining. And there is some environmental issues with that, but compared with the enormous impact from the oil and gas industry, it's actually, relatively minor. It's less. I don't want to say it's zero. There's certainly some environmental and some social issues around mining lithium and cobalt. The best source I would suggest is the Union of Concerned Scientists. They've actually done a lot of research on this, and you can find stuff on their website. Also, we just did a great webinar talking about the environmental impacts of EV batteries that's recorded, and you can find that on our website, and it talked about some of these issues as well, and people are working on it. So there's initiatives to try to do more socially responsible mining. I mean, it's broadly speaking, it's a broader issue around the mining industry. It's not just around EVs. Something people are working on.
Okay, thank you for that. And lastly, Is J-plug considered a universal plug? Is it common?
Yes, J-plug is very common. It's what, so I think you saw in the video how Mark put a little adapter on his Tesla plug to turn it into a J-plug. Aside from Tesla, as far as I know, it is on every single EV. Every single EV that you'll buy, except for Tesla, has a J-plug on it. It's universal for level 2.
And that's it. That's the time we have. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending.
Great, thank you all. Yeah, I was really happy to be here. I see we got a good crowd. If you've got more questions, feel free to reach out to Plug in America. Like I said, we've got a great website that has a lot of useful information. And two little pieces of homework for everybody. If you've never driven an EV before, other than the little experience we just gave you today, go test drive one. Go, if you have a friend or a family member who has an EV, go ask them if you can drive their car, and you'll be really surprised. It is not a golf cart, as one of the drivers said. And then the other is, if you know people who drive EVs, ask them what it's like to drive an EV. How do you like your car? Is it a hassle charging? Do you run out of power? See what they say. Most EV drivers are really excited and love talking about their cars. I also saw there was a question. Someone said, what is the future growth of EVs? There's a long pipeline of cars that are coming out. The next 12 to 24 months, there's going to be a ton of new exciting EVs coming out, particularly some of those larger cars like mid-sized and larger SUVs and pickup trucks. So I think the next 24 months is going to be really exciting with EVs. There's going to be some great new products coming out in the market. And as I mentioned, battery prices just keep coming down. So they say 5 years from now, EVs will be the same price as a gas car without any incentives or tax credits of any kind. And then they're going to get cheaper. So things are looking good.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.